Hi everybody, my name is Chef Jason and I'm the program manager for the flagship chefs here at Wellness in the Schools. Today we're going to talk about some fresh pasta. Now, one of the things that drew me to making pasta as a chef was my grandmother and my mother always used to make homemade sauce with me every Sunday. So it's kind of always been in my family and in my blood and in my heart to do this. So after I went to culinary school, I did an apprenticeship with an artisanal pasta maker, and we learned how to make handmade shapes of fresh pasta. And I'm gonna bring that to you today. One of the other cool things that we did was we made it vegan and gluten-free, which is pretty cool and pretty unique. So we're gonna start with a couple of simple ingredients. The first thing we're gonna do is we've got our scale right here. And we're gonna balance it out with our bowl on top of it. Now we're gonna add some potato starch. And we need about 15 grams of our potato starch. Now we're gonna add our cassava flour. We need about 20 grams of our cassava flour. Next, we're going to add the thing that's going to bind it all together. This is called konjac root. I'm going to add this in. We need about 15 grams of our konjac root. And now, we're going to add some flavor in here. Flavor and color. This is ground up beet. So it's dehydrated and ground up into a fine powder. We're going to add in some beet. And if you're not really a fan of beet, you can use cauliflower or carrot or chickpea or any real vegetable that you want to give your pasta that kind of flavor and punch. So we're going to do about 20 grams of our beet as well. And then we do a pinch of salt. We're going to mix that up until it's nice and incorporated. So look at that color. Once we're all incorporated together, just like that, I'm gonna put it back down. We're gonna take some warm water and add it right to our mixture. We need about 3 times as much water as we have our powders in our weight. So right now we've got about 80 grams of our solid mixture, so I'm gonna look for about 240 more grams of water. Add it slowly. Okay, it's about 200 more right now. We're gonna add it in. Sometimes when you're mixing this in, the different brands of flour that you'll get will absorb the water differently. So you're gonna add the water in gradually. And it's gonna look like a weird little muddy paste for a while, but then eventually it's gonna come together and form our dough. So we're a little thick right now. I'm gonna add a little bit more water. And mix it all in. Now's the fun part. We're gonna get in here with our hands. So now we're just incorporating it all together. And you might need to add a little bit more of the potato starch just to get it to the consistency that you want. We're a little bit moist right now, a little bit wet. So we're gonna add a little bit of that potato starch in there. Now, when I talked before about binding, traditional pasta recipe is made with flour and egg, or flour, salt, and water. Most of the time, it's made with a semolina flour or a 00 flour, and then egg. And those are gonna give us gluten and make our recipe not vegan. So here, we're substituting out the semolina flour, which is made of wheat, with our cassava flour, which is a root from a vegetable, a melon, actually. And potato starch. Then our binder is the konjac root. That is substituting in for our egg. And that's gonna make it all together and mix all together nice and solid. Get a little more potato starch in here, and then we can start shaping our pasta. So once everything's all incorporated together in this nice round ball, we're gonna put it on our cutting board. And I always like to flour the board. So I take some of my potato starch and put it down. This lets us really use it freely, and so nothing's gonna stick and nothing's gonna get all clumped together. Now, with a big piece like this, it's gonna be hard to work with. So we're gonna look to cut off a small piece. So I'll take my bench scraper and cut off a small piece. Now, we're looking to make some traditional hand-rolled pieces of impasto shapes here. So there's a couple that we can go with. And first, you're gonna take it and run it right through some of that potato starch that we have down on our board and just start to get a nice log or a snake. Remember, like when you were playing with Play-Doh as a kid. And you want it to kind of spread out nice and evenly. And now, we're gonna take it, we're just gonna cut off a little piece so we have a manageable bit. And again, we're gonna get it nice and even. So here, we're gonna cut it into about 1 inch long. It doesn't need to be exact. We want them to be about the same size so they all cook at the same speed. And now, if you don't have a bench scraper like this, you can use anything. This dough is so soft that a butter knife will cut right through it. So we're gonna take our butter knife and we're gonna use the flat side. And you just press it right down on your piece and bring it right to you. And now you've got this nice, cool little curl right on your piece of pasta. And we just made cavatelli. Cavatelli is a nice traditional shape of pasta from southern Italy. It holds the sauce really well because it's got that groove in the middle and it's got enough pasta there that it's a good bite, so it's gonna be a really nice filling piece of pasta. And it's a fun thing you can do together with your kids or your family, or you know, if you're just watching some TV by yourself, it'll be cool thing to do. And your guests will be all impressed. Now another shape that we can do with the same dough and in the same way of doing it by hand, you take that piece of dough and you kind of just break off another piece. This is called trofio that we're going to be making. This is another really traditional pasta shape from southern Italy. The nonnas in southern Italy would make this shape whenever they had to make a lot of pasta. And really all you do is roll it out and spread your fingers. And then whatever kind of comes of it is what you get. So you're going to get these uneven pieces that are going to have these little tails that come off of them like that. But they're gonna be in these nice little cool spirals. So they're fun in your mouth, they have a good mouth feel, and they cook really nicely, and you get a bunch of different textures while you're eating it. Simple to do, you can do a lot of them all together. You can do 2, 1 in each hand. Just spread your fingers, and then you've got the beginnings of your trofio right there. You break them up, and you got all these little pieces. And again, when you're dealing with fresh pasta like this, it cooks super quickly, which we're gonna go show you right now. So as you can see, you got that nice little groove right in the top of our cavatelli. And when you're cooking fresh pasta, the water doesn't need to be boiling. You do want it to be salted, which we already did, and now it's up to temperature. So you just want to make sure that that water gets hot. And once it's hot, we're going to take our handful of our cavatelli and just drop them right in. Get all these guys in there. And again, this cooks super quickly, so all we have to do is wait for it to rise to the top. I'm gonna give it a little stir just to make sure it doesn't clump together. Other than that, leave it alone. Let it come up to the top and then we'll be in good shape. Once all of them are floating, we know that they're ready. So right now we're just waiting another minute and then we're gonna grab some out and give them a taste. All right, getting our last bit of these cavatelli out of the pot. You can see there's a nice shine on them. Give them a taste. Super sweet, really good al dente taste to them. One of the problems that you get with a gluten-free pasta is the texture is never right. With this recipe, you're gonna have really good texture all the way through. It's gonna hold up to a nice hearty sauce, especially a shape like this. So you can get away with like a traditional tomato sauce or even an Alfredo or something like that that's kind of creamy. I personally like to put something that's kind of herby or a little bit bitter because you're going to get some sweetness from the sugars and the beets. If you pair this with like a arugula pesto, that'll give you nice peppery notes from the arugula, and you'll have really good flow right over that pasta. But this is delicious as it is. When you're sheeting out pasta, if you want to make ravioli or a flat cut pasta like a tagliatelle or a fettuccine, you use a sheeter like this. This is an old style one. You can get one that goes onto a mixer or something, but this one's from my mom, so she gave it to me and we're using it today. So I like to use a little bit of our bench flour. So this is our potato starch that we're putting down on our piece of dough. And we're gonna start with a pretty thick piece of dough. And over here is an adjustable knob that'll adjust the settings of the rollers as it goes through the rollers. So we're gonna start here and just press it through, and you'll see it come out the bottom. Now it's decidedly thinner than it is on the top, as you can see. But this is not thin enough, so we're gonna fold it over and get a little bit more of our flour on the top and the bottom, and then we're gonna put it through again with the same thickness. And fold it over one more time. One more flour top and bottom. Go right through one more time. And now, this is a little too thick for a noodle or for a ravioli. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take it a step down, make it a little bit thinner as we go through. Again, we wanna make sure that we have a good amount of our potato flour on here so we don't stick to the rollers, because otherwise that's a big old mess. Now you see it's getting longer and thinner. Same amount of dough, it's just going right through. So now we can use the cutter attachment to cut this up into nice strips of pasta. So we're gonna take our sheet, switch this over. This is gonna get cut right into fettuccine. Look at those, beautiful. See, got our nice little noodles right here, ready to go right into the water.
Hi everybody, it's Chef Ricardo, and I'm here to show you what I'm doing with some of my spring seasonal produce, the ramps that I picked up from the market. Now, ramps can be sauteed. Ramps are a pretty good vegetable to add in if you're looking for an oniony or garlicky flavor. In this case, I want to go ahead and put them in one of my favorite breakfast foods, a frittata. And a frittata, honestly, is not just good for breakfast. You could serve that any time of the day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, or even a snack too. And a frittata could have a variety of different vegetables with it. My frittata is just going to have the ramps alone. I was about to call them leeks. They are actually immature leeks, but they're gonna have the ramps alone. I want the ramps to shine through, but if you wanted to pair off their garlicky flavors with any other vegetables, a tomato or a red bell pepper would be an excellent choice. Also really pretty for the color contrast. But right now you can see that I've got my ramps in the same form that I received them from the farmer's market, from that farm stand. They've got a little bit of dirt on them. They're not ready to be prepared. So what I'm gonna have to do with my root end over here is give it a bath before I go ahead and cut it off. Because if you think about it, I could go ahead and cut these on my cutting board and move forward, but then I'm taking the dirt that's on my ramp root and just passing it through the knife. Not only is it contaminating my knife, but it'll also contaminate the cutting board underneath. Then I'd have to stop and clean up everything. And the proper thing to do is to just go ahead and just give this a little bath. So I'll take one as a little demonstration right here. I'm putting the root end right in, I'm holding it by the stem, and I'm gonna agitate it a bit. And it's a little hard to see from your end, but I see speckles of dirt immediately coming on out. Sometimes I have to get a little hands-on and just rub off the root a little bit. And ultimately, I am going to go ahead and snap off the root component because that is going to go in my waste bowl. But in any case, I have to go ahead and rinse out the bottom of that ramp just to make sure that I get off as much dirt as possible. And I think I did a pretty good job there. Now that I have my ramps cleaned, I can go ahead and prepare them in anticipation of building my frittata. So I'll just take a couple at a time. So what I'll do is that I'll just cut off the stems kind of around the midway point so I can keep the leaves separate from the rest of the bulb. The bulb I'll cut a little differently. Those I'm just going to cut into thin slices. The leaves are going to be cut into a chiffonade cut. A chiffonade cut is going to be like a very fine ribbon. So what I'll have to do for that is get all of my leaves together. I want to put them into 1 or 2 piles, and then I'm going to hold them and bunch them as closely as possible. And with the chiffonade cut, what I want to do is form a very nice bear claw, holding my fingers nice and tight. I'm going to put them down on the very edge. I'm going to trim off the very tips of my leaves right here because they're looking a little gnarly. I'll put them in my waste bowl. But what I'll go from there and do is just chop very thinly. This is something you could also do with a pair of scissors as well. But if you cut very thinly, very finely, you're not bruising the leaf. And if you bruise the leaf, it's going to turn a little bit black. It's not going to look as pretty. It may not be as flavorful. You're basically damaging the cell walls of the leaves. So I'm just going to trim these down to size and slowly moving my bear claw back as I do every single cut through to get a very beautiful little ribbon. It looks just like this. I'm going to put that in my bowl on the side here. And again, if you're adding other vegetables to this frittata, you can just go ahead and combine them bit by bit there as you go through your mise en place. But seriously, any herb like that would work out well. Parsley or cilantro would be just at home in this recipe with any variety of other vegetables you could add in as well too. Mushrooms would be really delicious here. That would add a lot of meaty, savory flavor from the umami elements, especially if you're using, say, a shiitake mushroom or a roasted tomato as well. If you're going in that direction, a cooked tomato would definitely boost up the umami savory flavor. And that would just play off the eggs, and it would be a really, really filling, delicious dish to say the least. For the bulb of the ramp, what I'm going to do is also use that bear claw, holding it very nice and thin by the end. I'm going to cut off just a little slice where my root would have been. That'll go in the waste bowl, and I'll just go ahead and cut my thin slices from there. You want to cut them to about 1/4 inch. This is going to be all mixed up with the egg at the end of the day. So this is something where if it's in a bigger piece, it's not going to cook as evenly. It's not going to be as tender in the final product. So I've got my ramps cut up here. The bunch cut up is about a little more than 1 cup, so I'll keep that on the side. The next thing that I have to do is just to start preparing my eggs. So I've got some eggs right here, and really what I'm going to do is I've got my waste bowl on my cutting board, and I want to go ahead and crack the eggs one at a time to just make sure that all of my eggs are fresh. That way, it's when, say, you're combining all the eggs together, whether it be for a frittata or for eggs, and you get that one bad egg that goes into the whole mix and ruins it, this is how you avoid that. You basically just have to do everything one step at a time. So I'll put my eggs down on my cutting board, and ultimately we are going to take our eggs, crack them, and then season them before we combine them with the vegetables. So let me go ahead and start to crack. And really, when you're cracking your eggs, you just want to take them, hit it just the one time, open it up just like that. And you really know if the egg is bad when it comes on out. It is something that you'll be able to smell very, very well. Decomposing egg does have a sulfurous odor, so it'll really, really smell kind of like it won't smell good to say the least. But this egg looks perfectly fine, so I will go ahead and combine that in here. And you really just want to get one clean hit when you're breaking each egg to just crack it open. That way you don't get a whole bunch of shell inside the egg. You'll just have to fish that out. Some people would advocate using a spoon, but quite frankly, I find that using a larger piece of shell is the best way of capturing other pieces of shells. For some reason, they tend to stick to each other. Now that I've gone ahead and cracked in my eggs, I'm going to add a little dairy to this mixture. And you can do this in one of several ways. I've got a whole milk yogurt here that's going to add a lot of body and density to my frittata. I find that if you are adding in milk, it tends to make the egg a little on the runnier side, and that ultimately makes it harder to set firmly. You'll end up with a weak frittata, something that'll come apart fairly easily. In this case, though, I want to go ahead and just use, let me get this with the spatula. I want to use about 1 cup's worth of whole milk yogurt, and it could be Greek. A Greek yogurt is going to be even denser, so you may not need to use as much. You can combine the yogurt with the milk, but you essentially want something that is going to have a somewhat firm consistency. It's going to be something that we're going to beat together, and it's going to be something that will set well when we ultimately bake it. So I've got about 1 cup of my yogurt here. I personally like a whole milk yogurt. Quite frankly, our egg yolks are a rich source of vitamin E and vitamin A, and the fat in the whole milk yogurt is actually going to help us better absorb that. So I've got my mixture right here, and before I go ahead and mix that up, I want to go ahead and season my mixture. So I'll take a little pinch of kosher salt, sprinkle that in. I'd say that's about a scant 1/4 teaspoon's worth. I'll measure out my other spices though. I want to play around with a delicious food synergy here. And a food synergy is where you have one pairing of foods or spices, ingredients that interact with each other to have a health promoting effect that is a lot stronger when these items are paired together as compared to being served alone. And in this case, I want to take a little bit of turmeric. And turmeric is a wonderful anti-inflammatory compound. I'm adding it in for color here, but it's also going to have some benefit for our body. Now, the way that I best derive this benefit is to combine my turmeric with a little bit of black pepper. So I'm just going to add a couple twists of black pepper. You don't need a lot, quite frankly, but when the black pepper combines with the turmeric's primary antioxidant, a compound called curcumin, is better absorbed by our body. And the other thing I'll do is just add a little sprinkle of garlic powder. Maybe I'll just add another 1/4 teaspoon, just like the turmeric. It's gonna boost up the garlicky flavor here combined with the ramps. But I want to go ahead and season my egg mixture, and you could season this a variety of ways too. If you like a more herby flavor, you could definitely mix in some oregano, you can mix in some dried basil or dried thyme, and the fresh herbs work well too, but dried works well too in a pinch if you've got that. So I would definitely mix those. If you want something that's a little more of a savory flavor and a little deeper in a color, you could add in a bit of annatto, or you could add in some paprika as well too, or a pimenton would really take this to a good place. Regardless, I'm going to go ahead and blend up my eggs. So I'm going to make that egg batter, and then I'm going to combine it with my vegetables. What I really like about a frittata is that it's something that you can make a lot of at once. You can combine it with a variety of different vegetables. It's a great kitchen sink sort of recipe, but it's also something that lends itself well to being packed too. This is about well combined. You want to make sure that everything is a nice even color before you move on with the next step. I've got one other ingredient that I'm going to go ahead and add to my frittata, and that's going to be a little bit of cheddar cheese. We had some plant-based cheddar cheese here in-house, but you can use any variety of cheddar that you have at home. Other cheeses wouldn't be out of place in a frittata as well too. In this case, this product is a sliced one, so I'm just going to grab 3 slices and I'll just cut it to a small dice. That way, we'll add a little bit of flavor. It'll just melt really well once melted. So I'll just cut it into small strips about 1/4 inch thick, and then I'll cut the opposite way to form my dice. All this time I've had my oven preset to 375 degrees. And I'm going to take all of my filling ingredients and combine them together. You can season the eggs or you can season the filling. It all comes together in the end. In this case today, I just seasoned the egg filling. Right now, I'll take my pan and I want to just grease this very lightly. If you're using muffin tins, you can use a liner. I find that the egg sometimes shrinks. Oil holds a little bit better, and the frittata, say if you're making individual portions, doesn't kind of shrink together. But you definitely want to grease this, otherwise it's going to be a pain in the butt to get out. And you could use a cooking spray if you have one available. I just take a little bit of oil and I wipe it around the edges of my pan for the same effect here. And at this point, I'll take my egg batter, just give it one extra mix to reincorporate all the ingredients well. Place my vegetables at the bottom of the pan, and I'm going to pour the egg batter over that. Once again, we use 8 whole eggs and 1 cup of full flat plain yogurt. Definitely don't want to use a flavored yogurt, but that was just enough to cover up my vegetables. So I'll just get the last dregs out with the rubber spatula. When I was working in a pastry department, we used to call these rubber money savers because it lets you really get out all the ingredients in the right exact amounts. Let me get a paper towel to just clean that up, and then I'll go ahead and put this in the oven, and we're really going to bake it for about 30 minutes at 375 degrees, 30 to 35 minutes. You want to make sure to see that it firms up. You can give that pan a little shake just to see if the eggs are setting. Past a certain point, you want to treat this kind of like a cake where you just do the toothpick test right in the center of the pan to double check to see that it's firmed up and cooked. So it's been about 35 minutes. I did have to turn my oven up just a little bit since I saw the temperature was falling on my oven thermometer. But all in all, we've got a really, really beautiful frittata right here. You could take a look-see. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is take out a little portion to go ahead and serve this. We did let it stand for a little bit to cool on down, but let me just take a knife right through. And the beautiful thing about greasing our pan properly is that when we go on in with our spatula or fork, in my case, it is relatively easy to just go ahead and lift and release that frittata. Ooh, you can see the steam coming out from that. If you were doing this in individual muffin pans, you don't necessarily have to go ahead and portion that. That's the beauty of that. Although you would want to use an offset spatula to just go ahead and support releasing from the vessel. But I'm going to go ahead and take a bite of this. It looks really yummy. I see little nuggets of the cheese that have melted. I see my ribbons of rank leaves here. I don't see the individual ramps themselves that were cut up, but those bulbs were white colored, so they're a little lost in the sauce right now. And I'll take a little bite. That's delicious. So I'm getting that garlicky flavor. That's what hit me first. Then I got a little bit of the cheddar there. And mentally, I know that a vegan plant forward or vegan cheese isn't going to have quite the same flavor, but my mind got a little tricked there for a moment. Just seeing it visually as a little orange nugget within the frittata, I was actually kind of expecting that flavor of the cheddar and kind of forgot that it was a vegan one for a moment. But you could use any variety of cheese in this. If you are going to use a cheddar, I do kind of wish that this had a little bit of a sharper taste, but that's just ingredient selection. What you could also do with the frittata too is use a broiler in your oven to just get a little browning effect. We were using a convection oven here, so that small little oven had the hot air blowing around. This browned up really nicely, but other than that, you could turn on the oven in the last you could turn on the broiler, I should say, in the last 5 minutes of cooking in order to get that same effect. But really, this is one of my favorite ways to use a produce in any season, and it's a really flexible recipe, lends well to being served with a salad on the side, for example, or some other veggies. Maybe you're serving this with a soup as well too, but either way, this is something that fits well in any meal at any time of the day, and just one of my favorite ways of using up eggs and veggies. I hope that this inspires everyone to go ahead and utilize the abundance of spring produce available. Keep checking out for those farmers markets because they will start opening up as we get deeper into the spring season, which will just lend for a lot of delicious ways to utilize vegetables, maybe with a pasta or maybe in eggs in a frittata like you've got here, or in any other way. Salads are going to be really yummy as well too as we get into the summer, but keep an eye out on that abundance of vegetables. And of course, thank you everybody for tuning on in. I'll see you next time.